It's me, I'm the Nazarite, bringing you Hebrew lore from days of yore. This one really is from days of yore because I'm going to tackle or, otherwise discuss faith versus religion. I wouldn't presume at any point in time to be able to whittle those two concepts down to something that's, done in a single video, let's put it that way. But I grew up religious. I reaffirmed my faith, and I reaffirm it, all the time. But as a teenager, asking questions, the larger, the deeper questions, the fundamental questions, and before that. So I do have one or two things to say about it from my point of view. So just to give this some context, I grew up Orthodox religious, Jewish, not ultra Orthodox, shun away the world and live in some box. No, no. I had parents who grew up in the 60s and 70s, and they believed in giving my brothers and I freedom of choice. In other words, their thing was, here is our tradition as we received it from our parents. We don't have all the answers. This is what we know. We don't want to bar the world from you, so we're going to expose you to this or that, and you need to make a choice. Now, I knew this growing up. They made this perfectly clear. They were more strict about certain things, and they were not lax, but not as strict about certain things. And that's just precisely the point. It's not strict or not strict. It's this is more important to me than the other. And that's a big difference. It's not as if you're saying that in religion there are top echelon things and lower things. This is something where in the Hebrew faith, it's not really, you're not really meant to do that as far as the commandments are concerned, or the mitzvahs, right? The good deeds, because you don't really know the spiritual and physical impact of your actions or lack thereof. So there are some commandments that we are commanded to do, and other commandments, deeds and actions, that we are commanded to abstain from. And we are meant to give the same sort of significance and attribute the same kind of, well, significance, for lack of a better term, to both of those. Hang on, I'll put my phone on silent. Okay, so faith versus religion. I grew up religious. In my earlier teens, and maybe even before that, I started, like I said, asking the bigger questions, and I started getting a lot into astronomy and into exploring nature through books. I didn't have the know-how or the tools, but I mean, I was reading up on physics. I was reading up on chemistry a little bit and astrophysics. And like I said, astronomy. These were things, it's not that I had any real grasp of the field or the industry, because there was too much math involved, to be honest, and I'm not a math person by disposition. But it did give me an outlook. It gave me an outlook, and I would have, and still do have, long talks with my mother, who is a doctor of biochemistry and right, a researcher who was very much into nature and God coinciding, right, reconciling science and religion. So that's the context, pretty much. So I grew up religious. I grew up with the rituals, and I grew up with the different physical aspects of, let's say, modern day worship, if it's synagogue attendance, and if it's the significance that you attribute to the written law and the oral law and everything that that entails. And then there was faith, which I discovered later on, because you do what you do because your parents do it, and that's a given. You're indoctrinated, also a given. Not necessarily a bad thing, I might add, but that's what happened in my case. And at some point, faith came into the picture because I was asking myself questions. I was looking at the world, and I said, okay, I got to start making some sense here. And I, around 15 or 14, I explored the different religions that were closer to me as if I didn't know them, right? I approached Judaism and Christianity and Islam, and to some extent Satanism, and I have a great reverence to Satanism, not devil worship, mind you, Satanism, a whole other thing. I want to make a video on Satanism because I believe that for those who are atheists, Satanism, or at least its ideology, for lack of a better term, its frame can be very beneficial psychologically and as far as conduct in the world, living in the world. But I'll get into that in a different video. Faith versus religion. Why does it have to be that way? Why does it have to be faith versus religion? Can't they coincide? I think that they can, but that because of the way of the world, and not even now, I'm talking way back when, the Hebrew faith, the Hebrew way of life, which I consider to be a very ancient thing, is not exactly, certainly not exactly, but in some ways it's not even close to the modern day Jewish rabbinical religion that we have now. I grew up with this rabbinical religion, and it's something that I have a lot of respect for in a lot of ways. On the other hand, when I take a look at the roots, and when I say roots, I mean the 5 books of Moses. And when I say roots, I mean the writings of different historians from the times of the Second Temple. It's like, the Hebrews are not. It's like there's this gap, there's this dissonance between what God desired, so to speak, and I use the term very loosely, and what is actually happening. And I saw this great gap between what I perceived from the Torah and what I was actually seeing in reality. So yeah, in my case, it really was for a time faith versus religion. I had a very difficult time reconciling the two, knowing what I know about the divine revelation as it's revealed to me through the world and through my being, and what I'm seeing in modern day religion. It was very, very difficult to have them together, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it without breaking something apart, without letting something die, in a way, shedding layers, burning off karma. I had to do that in order to reach a point where I could have them coincide to a degree. And there is still a lot of debate inside of me and outside of me going on faith versus religion. Religion, organized religion, and I know this because I'm seeing it, organized religion is to control the masses. Organized religion, as we know it today, is the result. I mean, maybe not true to all religions, definitely not true to all organized religions. The organized Jewish rabbinical religion, as I know it and we know it nowadays, is something that came about because of tragedy, destruction, exile, inner strife, tribal war, expulsion, just a whole mess of stuff. And there was a great dire need, a necessity. And so the written traditions were kept and the oral traditions were written down. This was not meant to be. This was the result of horrible things happening to the Hebrew people. And so we went into survival mode. This happens to the individual as much as it happens to a nation or a people or a faith. You go into survival mode and you cut certain things out and you stop doing certain things. I mean, in order for yourself to survive, whether you're a single organism or a people or an idea or a nation, you need to kind of get this minimalism thing going. And I mean that in the negative sense of the term. I like minimalism, but I believe that from this once great feast that we had, and I've given this analogy in previous videos, I think that religion as we know it nowadays, religion being any modern day religion, not any religion, but the big ones, let's say, they are the remnants of great spiritual paths, great spiritual ways of life that once existed. And because of the way of the world and because of the need to control people more than anything, to control people, to keep them where they are for whatever reason, I wouldn't presume to know, but that's definitely, you cannot deny. I mean, look what religion has brought to the world. It's brought a lot of good things, but it's brought a lot of war, destruction, death, misery, pain, suffering, malevolence of the worst kind. You know why it's the worst kind? Because it's a malevolent individual that hangs its actions on a higher power. Oh, God told me to do it. It says so in the Bible. And it's interesting how people pick and choose things from the Bible. I do it all the time. It's how I live my life. In a previous video, I mentioned the fact that I'm a cafeteria faith kind of man. Proudly so. Not proud, but I do it because I think it's the way to go for me. It couldn't be that dichotomy of all or nothing, black or white. There are gray areas in everything in life, in everything about us, ourselves, our body, our psyche, everything, our consciousness. So why can't there be a pick and choose mentality that goes along with organized religion or with spirituality? We're all drawn to different things. We have different dispositions, things we are drawn to, things we want to do, things we don't want to do. Why does that apply there but not there? Why am I supposed to accept things as they are blindly? Blind faith has its place, and it's a good one too. But there are times when the rules overtake the individual, and it becomes, from a way of life, it becomes a way of death. And when I say death, I don't mean, well, I also mean, like I said, that organized religion brought with it a lot of horrible things, really. But when I say that instead of a way of life, it's a way of death, I mean to say that, at least in the Hebrew faith, in the Torah, these commandments, the biblical way of life, I always said that the Torah is a Torah of life because more than what we learn about what we should be doing, the Torah teaches us, and the Bible at large, teaches us a lot about what we should not be doing. There is a river of blood and horrible wars and destruction and death running through the very center of the Bible. How many deaths, how much strife and misery and agony and grief, just horrible things going on in the Bible. Are we supposed to think that this is the way to go? I don't. I think that more than what we can learn about what we should be doing from the Bible and from the Torah specifically, we are meant to learn. I know that I am meant to learn more about what I should not be doing, learning from our mistakes as a people. You can see that it's everywhere, in every kind of scripture. And again, I'm not talking about the New Testament because I'm not versed in it, but it's about learning what you can't do and what you can do, or what you shouldn't do and what you should do. So when I say faith versus religion, I mean that it's not that they can't coincide. They can. But when I looked at it earlier on, it was a tough thing to do because I saw all of these rules, these clad iron laws that are not to be messed with and are not to be doubted and are not to be improved on or changed in any kind of way. And I said to myself, that can't be it, because these rules are based on a people which existed thousands of years ago, but the courts that we had are gone. The temple we had is gone. The kings we had are gone. Are we actually to believe that this is what it was way back then? No. Even if you take straight up a look at the Bible, at the surface, you can definitely see that the modern day Jewish rabbinical religion is completely different from the old Hebrew way of life. And you could say, sure, that it's because at the time the world was different. Obviously it was. And I'm not saying that there's no merit to the rabbinical religion of current times. I'm saying that at some point, the rules and the laws and making things more difficult and being more pious, and I don't know what, it's sort of, you know, you don't know, but I'm trying to know. I am. I'm trying to understand how it got to be so that there's so much division among our tribes and our ranks. And this goes for Hebrews and it goes for, anyone and everyone else. The moment that you say, I know what God wants for everyone, here are the rules that you must follow, no one and nothing can be debated, and that's it, you've lost. Because it might be right for you. In fact, it's definitely 100% right for you. As soon as you tell someone else what's right for them, something there is amiss, something there is broken. Now, sure, you can say that this is a double-edged sword, because the human heart, feeling, right? Feelings and emotions. Emotion, I saw this in a recent TED Talk, energy in motion. Love it. So heart and emotion, you can't simply trust your heart. The heart breaks, the heart makes mistakes, the heart wants what it wants. And sometimes we want things that are not good for us. You can't only go with your heart. I know that about myself definitely. And you can't only go with your mind or your head either, because it would mean that there are certain things in this life that are illogical, and you must approach them from a point where you know that you don't know. Right? Like Socrates, was it Socrates? All I know is that I know nothing. You can't go into a spiritual way of life thinking you have it all figured out. You need to have certain pillars of understanding, certain pillars of truth. Now, and this is something I want to come to now, or I'll forget. In the debate of religion versus faith, it's truth that brings it together. Truth is that middle pillar going down the center from the root of all creation and until the final moments of mankind and before we go on into our next adventure, whenever and whatever, however you want to take that. It's truth that runs straight down the line, across or straight down, however you want to see it. If you seek truth, and I mean, when I say truth, I don't mean what's right for me. I mean a kind of truth that is sustainable over time. If you go with truth and if you seek it, it's said in the oral traditions that the seal of God, the seal of the Holy One, blessed be He, is truth. Now, what is the seal, right? The seal would be the right, the ring for all intents and purposes with your mark that you would sign or seal something with, and people would know, it came from this person, it came from that person. Much, like we have a stamp of some kind, be it a rubber stamp or any kind of stamp. The stamp of approval, the seal of God, is truth. As long as you, as an individual, as long as you hang your hat at a place of truth, sustainable truth, meaning truth that can be replicated and that it's sustainable over generations, I think that's your best, what's the word I'm looking for? It's on the tip of my tongue. Anyway, that's the best that you can do. I really feel that way. The more I study, the more I learn, the more I become immersed in spiritual teachings and very physical teachings of the Talmud and of the Mishnah and of learning the history of the time when they were canonized and written down, or codified rather, and written down. I'm beginning to grasp more and more how much of a mess it was, and how it's almost impossible to come out with something that's sustainable for generations across time when the root of it is so messed up. I mean, a root of exile and destruction and tragedy, malevolence, strife, tribal war, inner conflict. How can you expect those circumstances and that conduct and that kind of society to yield something which is truth and which remains truth for generations and which does good? And that's what I'm coming to right here. Because at some point I was talking to someone and he told me that my way of life is not sustainable over time. And that in a couple of generations, my grandchildren may not be Hebrews, may not be the kind of people I would want them to be. That's a risk I'm willing to take. I am not going to sacrifice my own spiritual and physical way that's right for me for the sake of later generations. I'm not going to do it. Many people across time, and certainly in the last, 1,000 years, or 2,000 years without a temple, almost 2,000, they gave their lives in a way and stuck to the rabbinical traditions so they will be able to pass it on to their children. I mean, the only reason that I grew up religious as a religious Jew, the only reason that I had that privilege is because I got it from my father, who got it from his father, who got it from his father, and so on and so forth, going way back. So who am I to go against that? Who am I to sever that connection? And I told that guy I was talking with, I told him I'm not passing it on if I'm not all in. I need to find a place and a time and a kind of idea that I am all in about. And that way is truth. And I went with my truth, and I'm still going with my truth. And what I'm passing down to my children is this idea of truth, of honesty, of a kindness between people more than anything. And that transcends any religious idea. It really does, in my opinion, transcend all of the dogmas, all of the doctrines, and all of the rituals. A lot of the things that we have nowadays, certainly in the organized religion of rabbinical Judaism, the Jewish religion, so many things are based on concepts and rituals which are a lot less ancient and a lot less poignant than those ideas of the Torah being an instrument of life and of truth and of kindness, and not of a lot of things that are going on now. So many people are doing horrible things in the name of God. Now, this is not new. People have been doing that since time immemorial. And I decided I'm not going to go with that. I'm going to find my way to be a Hebrew man so I can reconcile that faith versus religion conflict. And it's a damn shame that it needs to be a conflict, but there's no denying that it is, or at least for me, it was at a time. And with each passing day, with each passing uh, teaching that I incorporate and that I take into my being and that I try to manifest in my conduct, I discover more and more what's important to me and what is less important. And there's no debate about this. Even if you think you're following everything to the T, you know, there are still things that you will attribute more significance to than others. That's just the way of the world, and it's the way people are. And I decided that if I'm going to keep my faith and have my religion, I'm going to have to find a way to reconcile the two and not call it faith or religion, but the Hebrew way. And that's what I consider myself to be, a traditional Hebrew man with my way. Is it dangerous? Yes, it is. Because there is no guarantee that I will be able to pass my way down to my kids. No guarantee at all. I'm taking a risk. And that means that it could very well be that that dude was right, and that a couple of generations down the line, my grandchildren will have no idea, not follow anything, and all they will know is that, oh yeah, my grandfather, was this or that. That's it. That's a risk I'm willing to take because the payoff, let's say, the rewards are much greater than anything that can be passed down through the modern day traditions. I might be wrong saying that. I don't speak in absolutes, but I think that there's a lot to learn from the traditions of old. And when I mean traditions of old, I don't mean the ones that are the result of exile, war, destruction, and death. I mean they are the ones which are the result of a connection with the Most High. And those traditions are there too. Just because certain people, for certain purposes, be they malevolent or benevolent, just because certain people decided to put emphasis on certain ideas or teachings, it doesn't mean that I need to do the same with my kids or with myself. There's a lot more to say on faith versus religion. I'm going to stop here. Let's have a wonderful, wonderful day, a wonderful week ahead of us. It's a new Gregorian month. God bless.